me is deal making time. So I respect your time. I appreciate you attending. And the goal here today is for you to get about $2 million worth of value out of the next 60 minutes. Since this is my first time doing this, if you don't, I'd like some feedback after the class. Please send me an email or send Kat an email. What you did like, what you like, what you may have preferred I went over, stuff you didn't understand. Whatever the case may be, do me a favor. Don't just give me a I liked it or I didn't like it. Give me a little bit of detail. So if we do this again, we can improve it not only for yourself, for maybe some of the other folks who will be joining us. Some of the things I'm going to go over today, we're going to do some questions at the end. I'm going to go over the culture of commercial, some things that you should be aware of if you get into this line of work. One thing I'm going to say is, first, I'd like to go over what this is not. One who, let's say, has a business and also owns the real estate, you're going to have to break down what are you allocating for the price of the real estate and what are you allocating for the price of the business. For example, guys want $2 million. Okay, but how much are you allocating towards the real estate? $1 million. Okay, so now he's telling you he's got $1 million business. You have to go through that paperwork. So that's going to be a very big thing. Some of the terms you may hear, which we'll go over when dealing with the real estate where a business is involved, is turnkey or key money. That generally applies to restaurants, or let's say you have a turnkey spa. That means that the next tenant can come in and it's ready to go minus, whatever paint job they're looking to do. Key money is something that we'll go over. I'll go over it now, actually. That is a price you're going to pay to get in the door. For example, I have a restaurant and I want $250,000 key money. That means you're going to pay me $250,000 for all the FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment that is in that restaurant. And then there may be a lease price or a sale price on top of that. That key money is the buyout, if you will. All right. I'm going to go over some etiquette with commercial. That's going to be very, very different if you only do residential, that you do need to be aware of. The first thing I'm going to say, and again, I am not advising you to do this. I'm not telling you I know anyone who does it. I'm telling you it happens. If you take on a commercial listing and you are not doing anything with it, meaning it's been sitting there with your sign for a month, expect that other brokers are calling your landlord or your seller and they are having meetings. It is a known gray area in the commercial world. It's not something that any of us call the real estate commission on. Not telling you it's right, not telling you to do it, but it happens and you have to be aware of it if you want to play in this arena. If you choose to go to the real estate commission on it, that's your business. You'll probably be blackballed from the community. Again, guys, in commercial, there's a lot of brokers. It's probably only about 10 of them that actually do deals in each particular sector in a county. So keep that in mind. There's not as many brokers. Word gets around real fast who's doing what, good or bad. So etiquette. If you're calling a commercial listing or commercial landlord, you may be surprised at the response you get when you say you're from Keller Williams. Keller Williams has a presence here in New Jersey in the industrial sector and in the multifamily sector. If you're calling things for some retail landlords, you may hear the dial tone when you say Keller Williams. If you're calling brokers, you may hear the dial tone. It's a very aggressive business. Expect people to be rough, expect them to be aggressive, and you need to know what you're calling about. The first tip I'll give you is in commercial, we are all brokers. There is no agents. If you call a commercial broker and you say, I'm an agent with, that's about as far as you're going to get, you're going to hear a dial. All right, we are all brokers. As far as making those calls, just some tips. Again, I'm not encouraging you to not work. I'm just giving you some tips that may help you as far as the etiquette in commercial. In retail and in industrial, there are generally no weekends. You can obviously work on the weekends. Generally, no phone calls are made, no new business calls. If you're calling an individual, meaning I'm calling Rick, I want to buy his building, he's the end user, that's okay. Calling another broker on the weekend, one, you're probably not going to get an answer until Monday. Emails are big. After 5 o'clock, if you don't know the person, probably not going to get a pickup. If you call somebody at 7:30 and you don't know them and they do pick up, expect to get a little bit of a lashing. All right. It is 9 to 5, Monday through Friday in the wintertime. In the summertime, again, there are many brokers that work 7 days a week like myself, especially the younger guys. If you're calling an older gentleman, especially in retail, some industrial, The first part of Monday and the last part of Friday, meaning before 12 Monday and Friday after 12, guys are down the shore. All right, so you're probably not going to get an answer. So again, I'm not telling you not to work, just keep those things in mind, because if you make a call during those quote unquote off hours, you may be surprised at the response you get, that it may be a mouthful. Meetings. I know in residential, you call someone today, you want to go out there right today, you want to meet for coffee, show up at the house. It's not uncommon if you're calling a commercial broker or landlord or seller that today is Thursday, they may ask you to come in next Friday. Again, most of the time, the meetings are going to be in the office that they work. Their week is already tied up with meetings. So don't take it personal. Don't take it as they're blowing you off. If they say, hey, come in, in a week from now, or call me in 2 weeks. Obviously, you want to follow up, but that is not uncommon. All right. Credit checks. Generally, there's no credit checks. When you're doing a deal in commercial, we ask for proof of funds. If you're doing a lease deal, we ask for a corporate or a personal guarantee. We'll go over that later, but that's basically the hard asset that the tenant or the corporation is guaranteeing the landlord that they're going to pay rent. All right. If you're going on an appointment, again, always have a notebook for taking notes. Know your facts. If you're making a phone call, the expectation is that you know your market, you know the price per square foot in that area. Zoning, we'll discuss that in sectors, but that's going to be some of the things that I'll go over later. I was a little premature in addressing that. Be quick and aggressive on the phone and on the phone call. You got about 15 seconds. All right, you're calling a guy who is during his day or in his office. He's got a million things going on. He doesn't care about how many deals you did. He doesn't care about what the weather is or how busy you are. What do you want? If you're calling about a listing, my name's so-and-so, this listing is vacant, I'd like to speak with you. When are you free? Quick, short, and easy. If you get hung up on, call again. All right, but no one wants to hear your life story in commercial. All right, so a couple of the programs that may be different, and again, if you have a question or I'm going too fast, try to raise your hand. One of the folks here will stop me and I'm happy to answer it. Programs, generally in commercial, there's no MLS. You can list it on the MLS, but most of the time, what you're going to get is a residential broker who's looking on the MLS, probably not too familiar with commercial. In commercial, the programs we use are CoStar, LoopNet. Those two programs are integrated. It's a paid service. It can range from $300 a month to $8,000 a month, depending on how many territories you want to have access to. We use programs, Crexi. Crexi is a good one if you were looking to purchase. 10X is an auction site. Again, that's purchase. These cover all sectors, by the way: retail, industrial, multifamily, office. Retail lease track is a service that's used if you're doing tenant work. So, for example, you want to know who the point man for McDonald's in this area is, you would go to retail lease track or plain vanilla shell, and that would give you the person's information. State info service or other tax mapping services. A big thing in commercial is you have to find the deal, right? So you're driving down the road, you see a piece of property that might work for one of your investors, you jot down the address. Now, how do you find the owner? You have to have a program like State Info or something else that will give you the owner's, potentially the owner's information. You may run into a situation where it gives you an LLC or an address, and then you'll have to use a program like White Pages to play around with it. Maybe it's John LLC at 123 Main Street, Fort Lee. You go to White Pages, you look up 123 Main Street, Fort Lee. First thing I do is I punch it in Google. If I see 123 Main Street is a house, then I know that that LLC belongs to a person. If I see 123 Main Street is a 19-story office building, I got to get creative with how exactly I find out who owns this. And there's a lot of creative ways to do that. You can be the pizza guy, you can be whoever you want to be, as long as you're not breaking the law. Dress. So dress is a little bit different in commercial. You are expected to be business smart or business. Business is obviously suit and tie. Business smart for the guys is button down and jacket. There are generally, you'll see some of the older gentlemen in the polo shirts and khakis in the summertime. Most of the time, those guys have been doing it a very long time, and everybody knows that. You will probably not see anyone in short sleeves or with tattoos hanging out in the commercial field. If you do, they probably know the client very well. If you are going into a meeting with a landlord or a seller and they have an office building, you are expected to be business smart, dressed up, no jeans. Again, it's your call. I'm not telling you how to dress, but the expectation is that you will be looking like you're there to do some kind of business. Again, you're not in people's homes. Timelines. So timelines for payment on leases can be anywhere from a few months to a few years. That can also apply to purchases as well, depending on approval timelines, which I'll go over in just a minute. Commissions. Everybody asks about what a commercial commission is. So commissions are generally what you negotiate. There's a pretty big sliding scale. One thing I'll say is if you're negotiating a sale, obviously it's paid at the closing of title, just as a residential home is. If you're doing a lease, generally it's paid when your tenant, you'll get 50% when your tenant opens for business. You'll get another 50% 6 months later. So just to give you an idea of what that means. If you're at a building and you're doing a lease and a landlord has to do work to the space, and that work is going to take 4 months. So you sign your lease today, the landlord has 4 months to do their work. Maybe the tenant has another 4 months. So now we're at 8 months if all goes well. You may be a year out from your first 50% payment. So again, keep that in mind. You may bill out $1 gazillion in May, but you may not get paid for another year or two. Let's see, higher deals. So again, this is all when you're negotiating, but when you start hitting that $10 million range, the expectation of a 6% probably not going to happen. You're going to find yourself, if you're good, somewhere around 3%, maybe a little less. If you're going higher than that, 30 million and above, you may be capped at a flat fee, somewhere around $300,000, depending on, it could be a $50 million deal, it could be a $100 million deal. It's not going to continue to go up. It's going to cap at a certain point. All right. If on a lease deal, how do you calculate your commission? Okay, so you do a 10-year lease, you have a 5% commission. You're going to calculate that on the net aggregate rent, meaning what is the base rent that tenant paid you for all 10 years, including the increases. So if the guy gave you 100 grand a year with no increases for 10 years, that's $1 million. 5% of that is 50 grand. That's how you would get your commission. The only thing I will warn you on is that applies for the bigger landlords. So if you're driving down a town like maybe Bergenfield, where there are individual owners, you want to make sure you know your commission before you bring a deal forward, because they may just want to pay you one month's rent. All right. And then you have to value your time. If you're getting 3 grand and you're spending a whole year to make a deal, it may not be worth it for you. And it might be, and that's okay if it is. Let me see. So on those commissions, we'll go into listing appointments, but we have something which Cat has. It's called an open commission agreement in commercial. Open commission agreement means you call up a particular seller or landlord and you have a specific buyer interested or tenant. And the landlord says, I don't want to give you a listing agreement. Okay, I'll say, well, I'm looking for my friend Rick Becker Incorporated. I want coverage for Rick Becker Incorporated only. So you will submit to them an open commission agreement, which states that you will be covered on that commission for Rick Becker Incorporated and all affiliates for a period up to 12 months. So that's kind of a nice way in the door with the landlord to show him that you're working his deal and you're not looking to just hang a sign and, leave your sign out on the highway for a year. All right. Let's go into the types of purchases, unless we have any questions. Okay, no questions. So purchases, different types of purchases to be aware of. You got guys that buy on spec. Buy on spec means they buy it, they don't care what's wrong with it. This is generally done when you have an environmental property with an environmental issue. If you have someone buying a property with an environmental issue, that means they know how to deal with environmental. That's the value that they can bring to the table. They can touch properties that people don't know how to deal with. If you have that guy, that's about as good as a gold bar as far as I'm concerned. Please call me. I have a ton of property with environmental issues that they can buy. There's what's called a straight purchase. Straight purchase means there's a building for sale. We're going to buy it with a fair due diligence time, and that's it. The segue to that is a development deal. Development deal means I'm going to take this property, which has a structure on it, or this piece of land, and I'm going to do something else with it. With that deal, there are generally many approval contingencies, meaning I'm going to buy this contingent upon me being able to do a Wawa. And I will sign your contract and I will have maybe up to a year to get this Wawa approved. And if I do not, there is no deal. Some of those contingencies will also be environmental. Environmental is something that has a sliding scale. If I have a piece of property, it may have contamination that is allowable for an industrial business to be there. It may be allowable for a retail business to be there. It may not be allowable for a residential or an office building because of whatever type of contamination it has. So again, that's a little bit of a sliding scale. We can get into that later if someone has a specific question, because that's something that we can kind of go on for days about it, and everybody's got their own experience with it. The process of purchasing is a little bit different than residential. So we don't just submit a contract right away. We submit what's called an offer or an LOI, letter of intent. That is a non-binding document that states the business terms of the deal, price, due diligence, what they're going to do, etc. Attorneys, we try to keep them far, far away from this piece of this paperwork, because they're going to mark it up anyway, and they get the agreed upon offer when they bring it to contract. We'll go over, I brought a couple of different offers in. We can go over the different ones at the end because they do take some time. I'm going to go ahead and just move forward. Once you have an agreement on the offer, you go to a sales contract. Similar to residential, it's just a contract stating the legalities, who's responsible for this. It lays out the due diligence time, the contamination. The due diligence time is your time as the buyer to make sure you have things like clean environmental, title, maybe a wetland study, zoning to assure that you can do what you want to do with the property. And generally, you try to have an informal meeting with the township if you're going to do something different or bring a different type of business to the site. You will always have to get town approval for your business generally, even if it's the same use. All right. For example, most people know I represent a firearms company. So they are a retail operation. So you can be zoned for retail, but they still have to go in front of the town to make sure that the town is okay with firearms being sold at that particular location and in their town. All right. So, and that's also very oftentimes a deal contingency is town approval. All right. Those approval timelines, again, they can be anywhere from a couple of months to a year, especially if you're doing a fast food, you have a drive-through. That's probably in New Jersey going to take you the better part of a year to get approval for that. And what it takes to get approval for that is a lot on the buyer or tenant. They're going to be hiring engineers, they're going to be hiring architects, they're going to be looking at the setbacks, doing the environmental studies. A lot of these things run simultaneously. Same thing for residential development. They're going to make sure that they can get the number of units approved that they want to do, which we'll go over in a bit. They're going to make sure that you can actually put residential there. They're going to do their feasibility studies to make sure that there's a demand. I'm getting a little off track. We'll go over that later. Any questions before I get into leases? Okay, cool. All right, leases. Different types of leases. So we have a ground lease. A ground lease basically is I have a piece of dirt, you want to lease it from me, you're going to do whatever you want on that piece of dirt that you can legally do. So I lease you my piece of dirt, you pay me 200 grand for the year, and you cover the taxes, the insurance, you pay for everything that you're going to do. You want to build a drive-through, you're responsible for it. All I'm doing is collecting the check. Pretty simple. Triple net lease as it applies to a shopping center. A triple net lease as it applies to a shopping center means there's a base rent and there's what we call triple net charges. Many people call this the CAM. The CAM is a part of the triple net charges. It is used interchangeably, but it is incorrect. The CAM stands for common area maintenance. That is 1/3 of the triple net charges. The other 2/3 are the taxes and insurance. So for example, the base rent is $20 a square foot plus $5. That $5 is your triple net charges. And you would calculate the square footage times the total of that number to get the yearly rent, divided by 12 a month. Triple net freestanding building, meaning one tenant building. Triple net means you have a base rent and the tenant is responsible for everything else. The taxes, the insurance, the maintenance of the grounds, the snow plowing, the lawn mowing, the grass, and all that. In the shopping center, the landlord takes care of that. That's part of your common area maintenance or CAM. All right, you have a gross lease. Gross lease, you're probably not going to see. A gross lease you will see. A gross lease tends to favor the tenant. A gross lease is I'm going to give you a set number, $5,000 a month, and that includes everything: base rent, taxes, insurance, etc. It favors the tenant because generally the landlord wants to do an increase on not only the base rent, but if there's a pro rata increase in the taxes, a triple net lease allows him to do that. A gross lease ties him into one number. So for example, if the taxes in the town go up 20% next year, and he's only increasing you 2% on your gross lease, he loses, you the tenant wins. So landlords are kind of hip to that. You may struggle, except with smaller landlords, like an in-town landlord who's not using a professional accountant or only has one building, you can probably get away with a gross lease. If you do a gross lease deal as a broker, you have to make it very clear what your commission is. Because if you're getting $5,000 a month and it's a gross lease, you have to determine with your landlord if your commission is based off of the $5,000 or is he breaking out those extra charges. Again, those numbers might be half of what your expectation is. So make sure your commission agreement, you may want to alter it for that deal to make sure it says the total rent. All right. Percentage lease. Percentage lease, you're only going to really see these in malls and a very low rent style scenario. So what that means is if I do a percentage lease, I will, as the landlord, I'm going to charge you a lower rent, and then I'm going to get a percentage of your business over what's called the break-even point, which I'm not going to get into, but let's say that break-even point is $1 million. That means that Popeyes in the Garden State Mall, they're going to pay $20 a square foot, and once they do over $1 million of business, Universal and Damco may get 5% of their total sales. So it's a way that a tenant gets in the door at a low rate, but the landlord can capitalize on the sale. The greatest story, and I think we had a lot on here before, she knows it. Everyone knows Home Depot on Route 17, Nick Laganello's father. The story with that is many years ago, when Home Depot was coming about, they went to him and they said, we'd like to do a percentage lease. And he gave him a percentage lease, and he's making more money on the percentage of what Home Depot is doing than he is on the actual rent for the lease. And of course, he did that multiple times over, and he owns most of the highway up that way. So you can make out as the landlord if it's a very good concept. Now, let's see. So that was leases. So I'm going to go over some common terms. And again, these are kind of going to span the spectrum on different sectors. So I don't expect you to remember all of them, but I'll go over them anyway. Value add. Many of you may have a buyer, a residential buyer, or a construction guy. You want to ask him what your, what do you do? What do you look for? If they say value add, what they're telling you is that they look for a situation where they can buy low and add some type of value to it. Maybe they fix it up and re-tenant it. So a lot of guys will buy a building at $1 million or whatever number. They'll fix it up. They put a tenant in there. Once they have that signed lease, they go back to the bank. That property that was worth $1 million with no tenant may be worth I'm just using round numbers, $2 million with that signed lease before the tenant even gets in there. So now they're going to do a cash out refi, and they're going to take 75% of that loan of value, meaning $1.5 million. So this is kind of how guys get rich. I bought a building for $1 million. I walk down the street, I signed a lease. I go back to my bank. The building is now worth $2 million. I spent $1 million. I want to cash out refi for 75%. That's 1.5. I put 500 in my pocket, tax-free because it's a debt, and I do with it what I want, or I buy another building. All right. NDA. NDA is a non-disclosure, or you might hear NCND, non-circumvent, non-disclose. I'm not going to tell you not to get these signed. You definitely should. What I'm going to tell you is, unless you're dealing with a major hedge fund or large corporations, Hackensack Hospital, and you have attorneys that are handling this, it equivocates to right about here. All right. It's very difficult to try to figure out how someone got a piece of information if it's not being done through corporate channels. Meaning, I have Patrick sign an NDA, and I say, you can't tell anybody about this deal. Okay. Well, how do I know if Kat calls the seller, and how are they going to prove that Patrick told Kat? It's really impossible. You really have to have a paper trail. So again, it's an added layer of protection. It will keep the honest people honest, but it's not a cure-all. Again, unless you're dealing with a major corporation, they're not going to risk it. But again, an NDA basically says if you're signing this, you're agreeing to not tell anyone about this deal or not tell anyone about the tenant. It's a form of being confidential. But good luck. A work letter. A work letter is something that a tenant will submit to a landlord that states, hey, I'm going to lease your space. This is the work I expect to be done. So if it's a vacant space, if it needs some work, they'll say, look, we need such and such electrical requirements. We need so and so ceiling heights. We need an ADA bathroom. et cetera, et cetera. Each tenant is going to have a different work letter. They may have no work letter. All right. Offering memorandum, or OM. This you'll see a lot if you peruse some of those sites I talked about. This is when you're selling a building or a portfolio. This is a little bit more detailed than a regular flyer or brochure. It generally goes over, if there's any income on the property, if there's any zoning, if there's been any issues. It's a full description of what that property that whomever is selling is and what you get from it. So it's very detailed. It could be 5 pages, it could be 50 pages. Cash out refi, we went over. Cap rate. There are different cap rates for different sectors of real estate and different uses. For example, CVS, 4%, automotive, 8%. What does that mean? Okay, the cap rate is one of the rates of return people use when they're making an investment. So a lower cap rate is going to be a higher purchase price. It is a safer investment. A higher cap rate generally means a lower purchase price. So when you have an investor and he says, hey, I'm looking for a 6 cap, means he's looking for a 6% cap rate on something. All right, and you would calculate the cap rate by dividing the net operating income divided by the purchase price. All right, so the net operating income, if the building is making money, you're going to subtract everything but the debt service, the vacancy rate, the taxes, the expenses, everything minus the debt service, and that will give you your net operating income. That's how you will advertise to your potential buyer or your investor what a particular property is. Other things they may talk about is cash on cash return, which is your net operating income divided by your cash investment. Again, if you're interested in going over these in detail, please reach out to me. It is a little confusing if you've never done it, so I'm gonna skip over it. Feasibility studies. So again, difference between industrial, retail, multifamily. A feasibility study for a multifamily may be, I have 500 units approved here. Is there a demand for it? And is the demand, how does that relate into the comps? I'm going to spend 10 million, I'm going to get 500 units. What can I charge for the 1 bedroom? And is there enough people that want 1 bedroom apartments here? For retail, it may consist of vehicles per day on a road, or VPD. So 20,000, 30,000. It may look at the different businesses in the area. For example, they may look at, all right, if I'm Taco Bell, where's the other Taco Bell and where's the other Mexican style restaurants? Is it feasible for me to put my restaurant here? Again, industrial, you'll see different types of feasibility studies. Usually with the large, super large tenants, they relate to logistics, access roads, toll roads. If they have a lot of deliveries, they may want to be on a road that doesn't have as many tolls. So again, you really have to dial into which sector you're working with, and there's different things that apply. Absorption, again, that's how many apartments or how many buildings or how many spaces are being absorbed in a particular period of time. Turnkey and key money, we went over a little while ago. Vacancy rate could be for a specific building, could be for a specific area. And obviously, you're going to want to advertise that accordingly, depending on what you're doing. Triple net charges, we went over. OpEx. OpEx is really the same as triple net charges. Generally, you see that more with the industrial and the office guys, operating expenses, OpEx. With retail guys, you'll see triple net or NNN, or again, sometimes wrongfully interchanged with that as CAM, CAM. Personal guarantee, corporate guarantee. Again, these are things you're going to see more on leases. And a personal guarantee, the person signing the lease is guaranteeing that lease. It might be a portion of that lease, but they're guaranteeing a certain amount of money. Same thing with the corporate guarantee. One thing I will make you aware of is a guarantee with nothing behind it means nothing. So I can personally guarantee you $10 million, but if I don't have $10 million, it's useless. And most landlords today, if I have that 10 million in the bank, I could always take the money out. So you really want to look for hard assets. What does this person, what does this company own? In leases, you're going to see a lot of guys who will say, well, I'm going to form an LLC for this particular site. That's fine, you can do that, but you're probably going to have to personally guarantee the lease, because if the LLC doesn't own anything, the guarantee's no good. Double rack system. A double rack system is for warehouse and industrial. It's the height that they can go up with their racking, where they're stacking their boxes. Industrial now is really focused on 30-foot ceilings or higher. All right, cold storage is also big in industrial, but if you hear double rack system, they're referring to the racks and the height that they can go up. LD, DI, drive-in or loading dock, that's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, if you have an industrial client, you want to ask them do you require? How many loading docks or drive-ins do you require? What type of products are they working with? Power output, again, you're going to find this mostly in industrial or potentially retail. If you have like a salon suite concept, they may require different power levels, so you want to be clear on that. Exclusions and exclusivity. You're generally going to find this in shopping centers. That means, so I'm a gym concept and I'm going into a shopping center. I will want an exclusivity on fitness. Will I get it? I don't know. The big guys will get it, and then the exclusivity may vary. So for example, if I'm, I don't know, if I'm what's the Pilates concept? If I'm a Pilates concept, I may only have a fitness exclusive on Pilates. They may allow weight training. The other thing you may run into is if you're a small guy, 2,000 square feet, 5,000, they may give you an exclusion, but not anything over, let's say, 15,000 square feet. Why would they do that? Well, they're not going to tell Gold's Gym or Planet Fitness to not come in based on the exclusion of a 2,000 square foot tent. So you're going to have to work that out with your landlord. Ingress, egress, obviously that's access. You're going to have to check those things, especially when you're looking at turnarounds and radius for your industrial guys. Again, you might have a beautiful warehouse. How many trucks? What's the frequency of his delivery that he's going to have? He's going to have 70 trucks throughout the day, and there's a difficult egress or a difficult ingress, or the egress is on a main road like Broad Ave in Richfield. Guy might not want it because he's going to have a gazillion trucks stuck in traffic trying to get out. That delay time is costing him a lot of money. All right. So you want to make sure you know what your tenant or your buyer is actually doing. You want to have an understanding of what their business is. Turning to raise deliveries and over. Hard money, private money. Again, a lot, if you're in commercial, you're going to hear this a lot. Guys will use private money. It just simply means they're not going to Chase Bank. You know, they may have a private investor. Hard money, anybody can get. Interest rates are 1 to 4% a month. They're non-refundable. They generally take your property if you default. It's useful in some situations. It's also very risky. You really need to know what you're doing. VPD, vehicles per day. You may have a business that says, look, I want to be on the main road with a minimum of 30,000 VPD. That's 30,000 vehicles per day. They're telling you they want to be in a busy area. So again, there's websites you can go to for that. Any questions before I get into listing appointments? Great. Listing appointments, much different from your residential listing appointments. You are going to be expected to have ideas for the property. So you're going to 123 Main Street, which is a medical office. When you sit down with that landlord, he is going to expect you to give him free information. That means one of the things he's going to ask you is, what have you done lately? What medical tenants, office tenants do you represent? You should have some. Or if you don't, you may want to say, I have a relationship with XYZ. They're going to want to know what you've done recently. If you haven't done anything, it becomes very difficult. They're going to want to know what the price is. So you're going to be expected to go in there and know the price per square foot. Now, we generally give a range, but it's not something like residential where you say, well, I want to come look at your house, and then I'm going to go back and really dial in. You can go back, you're never coming back, because that's telling the landlord that you have no idea what you're doing. All right, so you're going to be expected to know what the price is for that market, what the parking requirement is. You're going to be expected to give them free ideas. For example, you may say, hey, listen, I noticed that there's no steak restaurant, or there's no physical therapy group in the town of Oradell. I have a relationship with XYZ physical therapy group. I think based on your location, physical therapy is what you want to go for. Or a lifestyle kind of tenant is what you want to go for, such as Orange Theory Fitness or Fabletics or something like that. So again, you're going to have to share. No one is going to trust that you have all these great ideas in your head, and you're going to start dishing them out after you get the listing. You are going to be expected to, let me see, you should have a formal presentation, which should list the people you represent, the recent transactions you've done, recent deals you've done, and you can play with that. If you only have 2 transactions, but they're very large transactions, you might want to word and say, well, I've done over 10 million in the last 6 months. If you have 50 deals, but they're small deals, you would say, well, I've done over 50 transactions and, you know, whatever in your area. So again, play with that, but no one is taking your word for it. They want to see what you've done and who you've done it for, and they want to see some big companies. So, you know, jazz it up as best you can. You're going to be expected to know market voids. Market void, again, is like I said, what's missing in this particular area. Access points. big on industrial. Again, access points, logistics near highways. Guy tells you he's a last mile delivery service. You know, he's doing these Amazon deliveries. You're not going to stick him in River Edge, right? Because you got 15 minutes till you get to the highway. No matter how nice your warehouse is, again, that 15 minutes is costing money. So you might want to be next to Route 80. You might want to be next to I-95. You might want to be next to 78. These are things that you're going to have to be aware of. And again, that will translate into the type of people you can get to buy or sell that building. Seller might say, I want a last mile delivery service. And they say, yeah, but you're in River Edge and those guys are never coming here. You should maybe focus on this. Again, you're showing your market knowledge. You're showing that you belong there. You are expected to chase down and gather business. You are not expected to put this on CoStar or the MLS and just sit and wait. That will never happen. Unless you have a property on Main and Main, I can tell you right now, if you're new in this business, you are never getting a property on Main and Main because there's everybody else before you who's going to get that prize winning property before it ever hits the market. All right, so you're going to have to show your knowledge. Weekly and bi-weekly updates are expected. That means I've contacted these 50 buyers. This is their response, spreadsheet format, a day of your choice, weekly or bi-weekly. You cannot just not call a landlord. Again, a month goes by, they haven't heard from you. They're talking to somebody else more than likely, unless you've generated some type of activity. The other thing that does is it makes your job easier because you have a seller or landlord whose intention is to get one specific use and you contact those uses and everybody's telling you it doesn't make sense, gives you an opportunity to present something to the landlord before your listing is up. Say, look, we went down this road. This is the feedback I'm getting. What do we do from here? We have to make an adjustment. So again, it's a little bit more involved than the traditional residential. Marketing, you will be expected to be proactive. You're expected to pick up business, go after business. That's your value. Generally, these commercial properties are large, right? So you have a big sign, everybody can see it. If it was as easy as just putting a sign up, they would need you. So they need your Rolodex. They need you to go out and work and generate the business. Look at who's coming to the area. What's big in California? Maybe they would want to open something up over here in whatever spot you have. We market by email. Some of you guys got my email blast. I get a property, I have a brochure, I send it out to people. You want to be really specific in industrial and in retail and in office, meaning this property is great for XYZ. Brokers are not going to think of that idea all on their own unless it's literally exactly what they're looking for. You have to cause that idea in their head, all right? Let's see. I'll go over some stuff to qualify some buyers in different sectors. And then if you're interested and we have some time, we can go over the different types of offers. So in the industrial sector, some of the things you want to ask your buyer or tenant, what type of business do you have? Number of loading docks, drive-ins, power requirement, ceiling height. Ceiling height is a big one. If someone tells you they need 16 and you have a building that has 15.2, doesn't work. All right, they need that 16 for a reason. Size of the trucks. What size trucks do you have? Is it a 57-footer? Is it a 42-footer? That's a big difference, especially when you start going to Patterson and these trucks got to get in and out of areas. You might have the best warehouse, but if the truck can't get in, it's no good. And again, you look uninformed when you bring your buyer out and he says, oh, but I have big trucks. You just wasted his time. You just wasted your time. Parking. How much parking do you need? How many employees are you going to have? So company might only have 10 employees. Do they need 10 spots? Or are they going to have 50 guests coming in? For example, that gym use I went over before. A gym will require maybe 5 parking spaces per 1,000. A movie theater requires double. Why? There's a movie going on at 8. The movie ends at 9:45, but the next movie starts at 9:30. You need to have double the parking within that 15-minute sector of time. So you need to know how much parking your guy needs because you may be out of certain locations that make sense based on parking. All right. Delivery frequency, hours of operation. Hours of operation is another one. You need to know some buildings will not allow you to operate after hours. Some will. So you want to know that. Also, when you're going out with commercial folks, you want to make sure you have what's called a site tour. A site tour could be a brochure of flyers. Maybe the front page has a spreadsheet on it with all the addresses you're going to, the price of those addresses, whether it's square foot or purchase price, and a couple of notes why you, the broker, like that particular site. You're going to hand that to your buyer. A site tour for commercial could be 3 to 4 hours, could be 8 hours, could be a whole weekend. So you want to make sure that you're not just talking the whole time and they have tangible information to look at and when they go home. A lot of commercial guys are a little bit more old school. So the emails are great. Obviously, you want to do them. You may find that paper tangible is a little bit more the speed that a lot of these guys, especially the older folks, like to look at. All right. So retail, questions asked. How many locations do you have? In other words, this is startup business. Type of business, target areas. So who are you targeting? Again, I'll go back to my high-end stuff. You know, if you're Athleta, probably not going to go in Dumont. All right, you're going to want a lifestyle shopping center. You're going to want to be around like-minded tenants. You also have to consider the service or price that, or service or product that they're selling. They're selling $15,000 watches, and they need to be in an area that will support the sale of those watches or whatever product they have. What are their needs? What are their wants? You need to know what they need. You want to try to get them as much as what they want as possible. Explanation of the concept, meaning again, what do you do? Are you a gym? What do you have classes? Are you weights? Are you boxing? You need to know this for the exclusive use. You also want to ask if there's any restrictions in retail. For example, you might have a deli. Want to go in a shopping center with Walmart, may not happen. Walmart has a lot of exclusions against a lot of products. So before you take your tenant out on a 5-hour site tour, call the broker, call the landlord. Hey, this is what I got. Are there any restrictions, any exclusions? KFC, they might have an exclusion on chicken in general, grilled, fried, whatever. Now the landlord may say, hey, I can get you an exception if you're only doing grilled chicken or if it's only 10% of your business. But again, these are questions you want to know. Radius, if you have a franchisee, what's the radius that you can be next to another, let's say Popeyes, right? I happen to represent some Popeyes guys. It's 3 miles. 3 miles as the crow flies, meaning if I have a building here, I need to be more than 3 miles as the crow flies, meaning a straight line from one to the other, no turns, in order to be able to open in that location. Most franchise businesses will have a radius that you need to abide by. Who's guaranteeing the lease? We went over that. What assets do they have? We went over that. Parking hours of operation. With retail, you also want to know what type of business, because public transportation is big. If they have the type of business which is they're expecting their employees to take public transportation, you're going to want to know that. That's going to be one of the key things. And you can say, hey, look, there's a bus stop right outside. Again, that's something that may kill a deal. I've done work with certain nonprofit organizations that most of their employees took public transportation. And if they were not near a bus or train stop, they would not sign a deal because they knew their employees would have a difficult time getting there. All right. Office, again, same thing. Type of business. One of the things that's big is you want to know if someone says, well, I have a phone business, what kind of phone business? People hate call centers. A call center is something like, well, it's just that. It's a call center. You call in and there's 50 people there. They have a very bad rap in the office community. Many landlords will not accept them. So you have someone who says, listen, this is what I do in the finance sector. Great. Are you a call center? No, I'm not. Okay. If they say yes, you want to make sure that the landlord is okay with a call center, because call center may say they have 20 people. They might have 45 in the building. They're taking up everybody's parking, etc. Not all of them, but that is the stigma that goes along with it. You need to know that if you're doing business with call centers. What amenities are they looking for? Again, office buildings have all different types of amenities. You can go to Glen Point Corporate Center in Teaneck. They have places to eat. They have a gym. It's very nice. You pay for that, of course. Or someone might just say, hey, I need a room for 10 guys. So you want to know what amenities they're looking for. Where do their employees come from? Again, do they need public transportation? Do most of them drive? How much parking are they expected to be taking up? And do they have any clients that come in? Multifamily. Multifamily, you're going to want to know the cap rate the person is looking for. You're going to want to know the number of units. In multifamily, the investors, they'll have a specific unit count that they target. It might be 20 to 40, might be 100 plus. Whether you have a builder or you have an investor, they know where they want to be. You're wasting your time showing them anything that they're not interested in. So get that unit count. The sweet spot financially. Look, everybody will say there's no price, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a number. So find out what that number is before you send somebody something that's 2 million and something that's 22 million. The 2 million might be the waste of time. You want to know where they want to be. Do they have financing or are they cash? What type of financing? How much are they putting down? Again, this is all things you need to know. With multifamily, if it's an existing building, if it's an auction situation, you'll find that everybody bids high. It's a little bit different from other situations. People bid high, and then they go in and they start checking off what's wrong with the building, and you work the number down. A little bit of an advanced thing, but you have the information. Again, target areas, other properties they own, have they done feasibility studies, what comps have they done to support the sale number. that's something you should do that you'll be able to give them. And that's really it, guys. I'm happy to go over the different types of offers, which consist of straight purchase, development, lease deals, and we can put the open commission agreement up on there so you can see it if you would like. Or I'm happy to answer questions if you have them.